Okay. Today is November 10th, right? 2018. Daddy,
Mm-hmm.
we are going to be starting the interview now,
All right, go right ahead.
and I'm going to be the interviewer.
Okay.
So
They give you the questions to ask?
they gave me the questions, and I'm going to ask you the easy ones first, but I first want to state sort of where we are and what we're doing. This is an interview conducted for the Library of Congress, and it's an interview of World War II veterans. This was being conducted at Ginger Cove in Annapolis, Maryland. And my interview is of my father, Paul Littleton Herring, and I'm his son, Peter Herring. So I'm going to ask you some easy questions and basic questions, I think, that are mostly for the record for this interview. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I.
Okay. The first question is, where were you born?
In Washington, D.C.
And what were your parents' names?
My father's name was Paul S. Herring.
And your mother's name?
My mother's name was Margaret Welsh Herring.
And what were their occupations?
My father was a dentist. My mother was not employed.
And did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a sister who was 11 years older than I was.
And what was her name?
Her name was Margaret.
And did your parents or your sister serve in the military?
No,
And where were you living at the time when you were young? Where did you live?
I lived with my parents in Hyattsville, Maryland.
And your father was a dentist, and where did he work?
Where did he work?
Where was his office?
His office was in Washington on New York Avenue in Washington. 1225 New York Avenue, Northwest.
And when you were uh, when you were getting ready to go into the service, World War II was going on, and you were where were you when in the beginning of the war? What were you doing?
I was in college at the time that Pearl Harbor was attacked
Where were you in college?
at the University of Maryland.
And what happened when Pearl Harbor happened? What did you do when you were in college?
Oh, I remember having lunch with a couple of the other students, and we talked about it. And then we talked about or referred to the fact that who was it invaded? I can't remember. Anyhow,
Japan?
it seemed like
Are you
we were
talking
too far away to really be involved much.
Well, it turned out that wasn't the case, though, was it?
No,
So
things
you
changed.
so you all were talking about the war in college, and at what time then, when you were in college, when did it start to dawn on you that something was going to be happening to you?
Well, the thing that we talked about was the Pearl Harbor thing when they bombed Pearl Harbor. And that still seemed a long way away from us. We weren't too concerned with it.
So, but at some point you did become concerned with it. What happened to make you become concerned with the war? Was it getting closer to you? Was it getting to the point where you thought you might have to be a participant?
I can't remember right offhand.
Do you remember when you were in college learning how to fly?
What was it last?
Do you remember being in college and learning how to fly?
Oh, yes. The government started a program called Civilian Pilot Training, CPT, and I was able to learn to fly at no cost to me. And I did that at the College Park Airport.
What was your thinking when you found out that you could learn how to fly for free? Why were you doing that? Was it just because you wanted to have some
It was
fun?
fun. I would look forward to flying, learning how to do that. And I really did enjoy flying.
Did you ever think when you did that that it might have anything to do with you in the war?
I don't think it did, no. Maybe somehow in the back of my mind, perhaps, but I still felt I was too far away from it.
Tell me, tell me about learning to fly at the airport, College Park Airport, when you were in college and you were supposed to be in class.
Well, I did a number of things when I was supposed to be in class. I've never been one for liking school. I just liked school from the beginning. I remember when I was very young, I asked my parents, when I get through high school, can I quit? I don't have to keep on going further, do I? They said, well, we'll see when the time comes. Little did I know how much education I was going to get. Because when I came back from the war, I went back to college and finished that and graduated. And then went to law school and completed that and then practiced law.
So at what point, getting back to college and learning how to fly, um, at what point in college, what year in college were you when you figured out that you were going to have to either get drafted or enlist? How old were, what year were you in school at college?
I think I was in my third year.
And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
And why did
I
you
got the
enlist?
call to go for the draft, that I was going to be drafted. And when I appeared, I said, well, I've already enlisted. So they said, all right, we'll just drop any concern about being drafted.
And when you enlisted, did they take into consideration that you knew how to fly?
I don't think so, no.
So you enlisted then and just did what they told you to do, went to boot camp and
I enlisted, was in the spring of, 43, 44.
I think you told me a little while ago you thought it was around 1941.
41.
Well, I guess it would have been after Pearl Harbor, so Pearl Harbor was December of 41, so you probably enlisted right after that, or maybe
Yeah, I guess that's
January
what
of
it was.
42 or so.
And then I expected that I would be called up, but that wasn't the case. Time went by, I think over a year, before they called me and said I had to come. It was not until September, I believe, of 43
42?
or 4, I forget the year. Then they finally called me up to, and I thought I was going to do it very soon. I went to, where was it? A classification center it was called. And that was in Tennessee, I think.
What happened at the classification center? What did they do?
Something that worried me very much. I found out that the classification center was where they were going to decide whether I would go be trained as a pilot or navigator or bombardier.
But you knew at that point you were going to be on a plane?
Well, yeah, I did, but I was very much concerned because I was afraid that I was going to be trained as a pilot, as a navigator or bombardier, instead of as I wanted to be a pilot. But it turned out, fortunately, that I went on further for the regular training for flying.
So from that time when you went to be, for them to decide where they were going to put you, where did you go first at that point? Did you go straight to pilot school?
Yeah, it was called primary training, and that was in Mississippi. I can't remember the name of the town. And we flew biplanes, planes with two wings.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm. That surprised me because I didn't know they were.
And they were open cockpits?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
open cockpit, and I didn't know there were any of those planes around still. But they apparently were pretty new, weren't old. They were, had two wings.
Were they two-seaters? You had a pilot and a co-pilot? Or one person?
They had an instructor
Mm-hmm.
in one seat, and I was in the other.
Where did they put the instructor and where did they put you? Front or back?
I forget whether I was in the front or the back. I should remember, but I don't.
And what kind of things did they teach you in the biplane? What kind of flying did you do in that training?
Oh, just normal learning to fly. I don't know how to tell you about that.
Were you doing any kinds of fancy type flying, any rolls or
No, pretty much
basic flying?
just basic flying. I did make a couple of cross-country trips, just out of ways and back again,
In that plane or another kind?
in that plane.
Oh, you did? And from,
And when I got, that was, I can't remember whether that was a month or 2 months. It was a very nice school. And I also went to ground school during that time too.
what is ground school?
Well, where they teach you things other than the actual flying. Teach you about clouds, what kind they are, and there I can't think offhand, but there are many things that you have to learn other than the flying itself.
Mhm.
And that was that lasted 2 months, I think.
And from Mississippi, where did you go?
That was Greenville, Mississippi.
Greenville.
And then I think that I went to next school was called Basic Flying, I think,
Where was that?
and that was also in Mississippi. And then when I completed that, I went to the advanced training, and that was in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things they teach you in advanced training?
Oh, isn't that awful? I can't remember.
Were you with a, were you by yourself when you went from one school to the next, or were you in a,
I was
Group
in
of
a
people.
class.
so a group of people kind of followed themselves
Yes,
from one training to another?
Yeah, there's a fellow here at Ginger Cove where I am now, and he flew the B-17s, and I asked him what class he was in, and he said he wasn't in any class. He got his commission in the Army before he went into flying. So he didn't, a lot of what we were doing was learning to be in the Army as well as flying. And this fellow I'm speaking of, he got his commission in the Army. I don't remember that he told me where he did it.
Because you had to go through a regular basic training that every other soldier goes through first,
That's
I guess.
right.
And then you went.
Not like every other soldier, because we were basically concerned with flying. Whereas the ordinary person getting drafted does 30 different things than I did. I can't tell you because I never went through that.
I see. I never knew that. So your basic training was geared towards flying, and somebody who's going to be on the ground had a different type of basic training.
Ground school, but all to do with flying.
So from Arkansas, where did you go?
Arkansas is where I got the advanced training, the end of it. At that point, I graduated and was given a commission of second lieutenant. And had about 2 or 3 months off where I went home, and then went back to where? Where did I go? Oh, one thing, they ask you what you would like to do when you get through with it. And one of the choices was being an instructor in flying, and that's what I wanted to do. So they assigned me to go to a school and learn to be an instructor.
Where was that?
I really don't remember.
Mm-hmm. So you went to a school to learn how to be an instructor first, and then you became an instructor?
I became an instructor, and I moved to twin engine planes. 2 engines,
No longer the biplane.
no longer a biplane.
You were teaching people how to fly twin engine planes.
Mm-hmm.
How long was that, roughly?
Oh, I really don't remember.
When you left, or when you got your commission and they asked you what you wanted to do, and you said you wanted to be an instructor, and you went to do that, were there some people who actually went directly to overseas
Yeah.
from there?
Mm-hmm. There were 2 reasons for asking to be an instructor. First of all, I thought it would be something I'd like to do. I always thought maybe I'd be a good teacher. I found out later that wasn't true, that you are a good teacher if you have good students. If you have dumb students,
That's true.
you're hard to teach them. Then you don't do very well as a teacher. But if you have a student who learns quickly and knows a lot to reading, then it makes you look good.
Well, did you have mostly good students or mostly bad students?
I think most of them were average. They were fine.
What would you say was a highlight? What anything stick out as a memory of something that you enjoyed or was fun during all of your training before you went overseas? Was there anything that stood out in your mind that was kind of fun, or any incident that happened that was?
I liked things that kept me from going overseas.
I don't blame you for that.
I remember I went to 2 or 3 schools in the South. I was assigned people to be with me in training. There would be we'd make a crew of 10. There were 10 people we figured would be a crew. And so I was assigned the men to be with me, and we would move on to one thing and another. And eventually we'd go overseas. And I do remember as I was approaching the time to go overseas, I got sick. I don't know what it was. It wasn't very serious, but I was in the hospital where I was at that time. And because I was in the hospital, they slowed down my process of going overseas. And my crew was doing nothing. They were just waiting for me to get well so that we'd all go together overseas. And they used to come by my hospital room occasionally, and they'd say, "How are you feeling today?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm better." But they said, "Oh, no, don't get better. Don't do that."
We like you better sick.
Because they want me to stay sick. Because that
I don't blame them.
that we didn't have to go. So I dragged that as much as I could.
When did
And you know, there were people with me, other officers, who said, "I can't wait to get into combat." And I looked at them like they were crazy.
I would think so too.
But there were really some guys that really wanted to get overseas and get to fighting.
Mm.
I had no desire whatsoever to do that. And I dragged it out as long as I could.
So tell me when
And all this is going on the record.
yeah.
You know, that's terrible. I shouldn't admit that, should I?
When did you get to fly your first B-17?
Oh, I can't tell you why, but after I graduated and got my commission, I was assigned to be a co-pilot on a B-17. And we were flying around hauling targets for gunners to learn how to shoot from the air, from the planes. And I can't tell you why, but they took me off of that and assigned me to be a co-pilot on a B-17. And I did that for a while, and I found that there were other fellows who were doing the same thing. And they had been instructors. And I found that I and the other fellows who were instructors had a lot more flying time than our pilots had.
Huh.
We were more experienced than the pilot. And one of them got nerve enough to write to the commanding general and said he thought it was unfair for us to be flying as co-pilots when we had more experience than the pilots. And that man had a lot of gumption, a lot of to be asking and complaining.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it. But the word came back down from the commanding general that all co-pilots who had had so many hours of flying and had been experienced with this, that, and the other things that are necessary for flying, if they had that, they would be taken off of the crew as a co-pilot and be sent to first pilot school. So I was mighty glad that he did that, but I wouldn't have had nerve enough to do it. And sure enough, they did. They sent me and the other ones who had the same amount of experience to learn to be first pilot of the B-17.
And how long did you spend as? There was a training period then for being the first pilot.
No, I went to a completely different place to do it. I can't remember where.
Let me go back to something you said about when you were flying as a co-pilot and you were dragging targets around for gunners to practice on. Did that mean that you were towing a target and you kept that target in tow while people were firing at the target?
That's right.
That sounds that sounds kind of risky. I would
Well,
think you'd want to have plenty of tow line between you and the target.
It seems like it. But change the subject, sort of. One of my law partners did that. After he'd gone through everything, he was a certified pilot, and he was practicing law with me.
Cliff Eisen.
Cliff Eisen, yeah. Oh, and he was telling it. He belonged to the District of Columbia Air National Guard, and he was pulling some targets too. And he came in one day to the field to drop the target and land. And he dropped the target, and his engine quit on him.
Hmm.
And he was pretty close to the ground. And he ejected, went up and came down in the parachute. And he didn't have much room. He landed on the ground. And he was dragged along by the parachute. And it wore through his clothes, being dragged. And he wasn't badly injured, but it was an awful close scrape. It's a wonder he lived through it.
When you started to fly the B-17s as the first pilot, how long was it before you went overseas?
Oh gosh, I can't answer that question. I don't know. But I tell you one thing I did. I was assigned to pick up a new B-17 from the factory.
Where was the factory?
The factory, I used to know exactly where it was in town. I can't remember, but I know it was close to the Canadian border. And I was given a plane there, which I was to fly over to England. And
Put your hands down so you're not in front of your face.
This?
No, in front of the face, for the camera.
Oh.
Just so they can see your face instead of your hands. So you went to pick up this new plane?
Yeah, I picked up it, and it was been a town, I used to know the name of the town where the factory was, and then I was to fly that. I flew it from there to oh, I should know that. Um, one of the New England states.
Uh,
I know it, I can't say it.
was that, were you flying it to an air base where you were going to prepare to take off to go to?
Yeah, I landed there and very quickly, a day at the most. And then I flew from there to Goose Bay. Where?
Greenland? Greenland? Iceland?
No, it was Goose Bay. I mean, I think it's part of Canada, but I don't know why I can't think of
Nova
it.
Scotia?
Hmm?
Nova Scotia?
No,
Did you have your full crew with you at that time when you
yes, I did.
were getting that plane?
Yeah, I had the full crew. And when we left New England, they had given us a wonderful thing that to find our way up to Goose Bay. They had movies actually of crossing the St. Lawrence River, what it would look like to see that. So when I did fly of it, I was amazed at what I saw was the very same thing they had showed us, a movie of somebody doing it. I didn't need it, but it was nice to know what I was doing was correct. So I flew to Goose Bay. Why can't I say that? I guess it'd be a province of
Canada?
Canada. Goose Bay. Damn, I can't think of it. Anyhow, I flew to Goose Bay, and just as I landed, it started to snow. And it really snowed. It came down so fast and so much that I couldn't leave because I was supposed to go on. That Goose Bay was really just a stopover. But the runways were so filled up with snow that I couldn't get out of there. And while I was there, just to kill time, I got on a link trainer and started practicing landings at Goose Bay.
Can you explain what a link trainer is?
A link trainer is a wonderful invention. It's a box-like thing that you get in and it has the controls of an airplane, has the instruments, everything. And you are instructed what you're supposed to do, and you learn so many things about flying. This is not trainer.
Does it have a screen in front of you that
Ah,
looks like what you would see out of an airplane?
yeah, you know, when you mention that, it may have, but I don't remember. God, it's been so many years ago.
Did it have instruments too?
It had instruments and controls, and you could actually be just like flying. And while I was at Goose Bay, just to kill time, I couldn't leave because of so much water, so much snow on the runways. And so I practiced making landings at Goose Bay. As it turned out, it was a wonderful thing. I'm glad I did it. Because when I left Goose Bay to fly to Iceland, I couldn't do it because I got so much ice on the plane that I had to turn back. I couldn't go. I had to cross a series of mountains, and then I had a long flight over water. And I had so much ice, I was afraid that I had too much weight, I wasn't going to make it. So I turned around and went back to Goose Bay. And I was glad that I had practiced those landings in the link trainer.
Did you come back into Goose Bay in daylight or dark?
It was dark. It was nighttime.
So you knew how to land the plane because of the trainer.
Because of the training,
Wow.
yeah. It was wonderful being able to do that, have that experience. I had that experience simply from being in the trainer.
That's pretty good. So when the weather cleared enough, you were able to get to Iceland to prepare to go.
Well, let me tell you about the
Yeah.
when I had to go over mountains before I'd go out over the water, flying to Iceland. I got so much ice that the plane got so heavy I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to stay in the air. And there were methods of getting rid of that ice. You could put de-icing fluid on the leading edge of the wings and also on the propeller. And when I did that, the ice began to melt, and as the propeller whirled around, it flung the ice off the propeller, and it hit the sides of the plane with a crashing sound, which was so damn scary.
Guess it was.
And hearing this, at first I didn't know what it was, but finally I realized that it was ice coming off of the propeller. And you get that crashing noise into the plane.
Were you worried that it would break through the glass?
Hmm?
Were you worried that it might break through the glass of the plane?
Not the glass, because it was coming inside of the plane.
So when you got to Iceland, how long did you stay in Iceland before you went across to England?
Just one night. I went over Greenland, and that was incredible. That was a sight. Greenland was just a solid sheet of ice. And snow too, I guess. They had told us what altitude we should fly over Greenland. Because there was no horizon. You couldn't tell, no way in the world you could tell how far you were off of the ground, your altitude. So I flew at the altitude that was suggested, but I couldn't see anything. So I thought, hell, I'm going to go up a little higher. So I went up a little higher, about 2,000 more feet, just to make sure I was going to cover it, be getting by without hitting the ground. And I did. You couldn't see that thing. All I could see was this white down below, because there was this huge glacier, I guess you'd call it, in snow, ice. So I got past that and out over the ocean, the North Atlantic. And then I got to where I thought it should be, Iceland. But we were not there. But I had been doing directing as well as having a navigator who was taking it. Shots on the moon, the sun, and everything. What do they call that? He was doing that. Oh, damn it, what do you call
Celestial?
that?
Celestial?
Celestial. Yeah, he was doing celestial navigation. and I was just doing directing. And I thought we should be getting to Iceland. Seems like time-wise we should be there. And I called the navigator and I said, I think we should be nearing Iceland. What do you think? He said, yes, we should be. He said, I think it's off to the left a little bit. I said, well, that's the way I figure it too. Do you think we should turn left and go up to it? Yeah, he said, if I were you, I would do that. So I turned left, and that was Iceland very quickly. And I landed there and spent the night. And during the night, somebody awakened me, said, you've got to come out and see this. And it was the Aurora Borealis. It was fantastic.
What did it look like?
I don't know that I can describe it. Oh, the only thing I can think of that might be like it is if you get a lot of lightning,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like that. But
Light up
boy,
the
it
sky.
just lit up the sky, and it was beautiful. So the next day, I took off England. Actually, I was headed for Wales. And I flew over Ireland. And I was amazed at how green Ireland was. It was really a beautiful thing to see.
Where did you land first when you got to Great Britain?
We went to Wales.
Oh, you did
The
land in Wales.
southwest corner of Wales. I think it had a name, but I'm not sure what it was.
How long did you stay in Wales?
Well, there they took the plane away from me.
Oh, your brand new plane? Your brand new B-17?
Yeah, because what I realized I was doing, I was ferrying a plane to them to use.
Oh,
That's why they took it away from me. And then I went by truck up to a place where I was stationed there. You mentioned it a while back, what?
Framlingham?
Framingham. Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't fly into Framlingham.
No,
That's where you were going to be stationed.
no, it was in a truck.
But you delivered the plane to a different place, and then they drove
Yeah,
you.
I delivered that to Wales. And then they got in a truck and drove from there to Framingham.
And Framlingham was what part of England?
It's in what they call East Anglia. It's the very eastern part of England,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I flew missions from.
And
That was a pretty nice place. I liked Framingham.
how long were you in Framlingham before you had to fly your first mission?
I don't remember.
Was it
Probably wasn't very long.
not very long? Was it? Wasn't a month, was it?
Well, I tell you what we did. We flew practice missions where we'd take off just like we would flying a mission,
Mm-hmm.
and fly around and come back and land. The whole thing was, we'd fly it like it was a regular mission, bombing mission, but we didn't leave England.
Didn't leave England. Yeah.
We just,
So you practiced
Practice.
taking off as a group and
As a
then
group,
gathering
Yeah.
from planes from other areas and getting ready to fly across
Mhm.
the channel. What time when you got to Wales? Was this summertime? Was it fall?
I really don't remember.
So it was snowing over in Iceland, Greenland.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's snowing there, but that's cold up there anyway. So
Mhm.
I'm just curious,
Yeah, entirely different latitudes.
timeline wise. I'm just trying to get an idea because I know your last mission was flown in December of '44. So you've well, I'll let you get into that. Um, so you were doing practice missions in the beginning, and how long do you think that lasted from when you got there until the time that you actually had to go on your first mission?
Oh, several months, I would say.
Several months.
Mhm. And I remember on one of their practice missions, flying along in formation, and all of a sudden, everything whited out. The windshield and the side windows completely covered up
Covered with what?
with ice, I guess,
It was?
or frost, probably not ice.
Uh-huh.
And because of that, I couldn't see the other planes that I was flying with. So I just immediately went up, trying to get out of the way of
Did
the
you
other
know there was
planes.
no plane above you? You knew there was no plane above you.
Fortunately, there wasn't anybody above me. Could have been, but there wasn't. So I just flew up and got out of the way of all the other planes. And then I guess I hit a little warmer climate because the ice and the snow, well, it wasn't snow, it was, I guess, icy stuff on the windshield. Everything melted.
When you did fly your first mission, uh, well, you had said something to me some time ago before I even get to that. You gave it a name and I can't remember what it was, but when your group in Framlingham took off, there were other groups from other parts of England taking off at the same time,
That's right.
and they were all forming up in this thing you called it, and I can't remember what you called it,
We go to the bomber stream.
a bomber stream. And so everybody comes to one point where you then all
Yes, and
turn
they
in.
have to be very carefully arranged so that they came there at a certain time.
Mhm.
And this group would be there, and you'd fall in behind them, and they would go on, and then another one would fly in behind me. And they were coming in there at all times. Trying to think of the name of that area.
But that was the geographic area where everybody knew they had to meet up in the
Mhm.
bomber stream to go across
Yeah,
the channel.
the coastline there was had a big gap in it, and it was easily identifiable. Oh, it has a name, but I can't think of it.
How many planes were in your group that took off at a given time?
I don't remember.
10, 20, 50?
Yeah, probably 25 or so, something like that.
So there were these groups of 25 planes coming from all over England getting together at that one spot.
Mm-hmm.
And how many planes would you say then got together in that bomber stream?
Well, I think there were times when there'd be 300 or 400 planes.
300 or 400. And when you'd get
It was
across,
called the Wash.
what was it?
The Wash, W-A-S-H.
Oh, that was the location everybody went to form up.
And you could
The
see
Wash.
it so easily. The Wash, and from there you turned and headed east.
So that must have been a place where a lot of water drained from England out into the channel, I guess. Why?
I guess, yeah.
Wash.
And then after you go for a certain distance, the various groups would break off and head to where they were going to bomb. So they were always breaking off and going that far, to their destination to bomb.
So if you had 300 planes, let's say, going across in a
Mm-hmm.
group, would there be would your group of say 25 from Framingham break off and go somewhere, or would it be more than 25 that would break off and go?
I don't remember. It was a pretty good sized number.
So you had a
And they would, I couldn't tell where they were going to do it. But the leader of our group knew where to break off and go. And of course made information.
Did your navigator have a rough idea though of where the destination was?
Probably.
I'd hate to
I
have
would think
I'd
he
hate to
would.
have to rely on.
He would almost have to, wouldn't
Yeah, I would think I wouldn't want to rely on one plane to follow them because they might get shot out of the air.
he? That's right. That's what happened to me.
So when you did break off to go bomb your target, those planes would all drop their bombs on the target, and then how did you all turn around together and head back home, or
Pretty
how'd
much,
that work?
I think. But on one mission, the target area had a lot of ACAT, a lot of guns,
Had a lot of
German guns.
guns
They
on the
were
ground?
shooting up.
on the
And
ground.
instead of just waiting for us to arrive, they were just filling the sky with shells and exploding shells.
Mm-hmm.
And from a distance, it looked like a summer thunderstorm.
Huh.
There was so many German guns were shooting up in the air and making a thing that we had to fly through. And I remember looking at that and seeing that, and I thought, it's impossible to fly through that and not get shot down. How is it possible that those shells exploding constantly? When I did get through it, which I did do, there was one other plane. I'd made it also.
There were only two of you, two planes that made it through,
Two of us, yeah.
out of about 25 or so.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Good Lord.
And I could see him way off in the distance. And I thought, I think I better hook up with him. Because I don't want to be out here by myself.
No.
So I think he had the same idea. And maybe we flew toward each other, but we got together pretty quickly.
Were you all able to communicate with each other
No,
just by seeing each other? That's all.
seeing
You
each other. We got together and turned and headed for England.
Did you go once the two of you got together, and after you'd been through all that flak? Did you continue to the destination, or did you just turn around and come back?
I found him, and the two of us just took off for England.
Probably wasn't much point in just two of you going to the
No.
destination. Wow.
I don't think we dropped our bombs. I can't remember, but I don't know how we could have. I know on one occasion I was told to drop the bombs, even though I didn't have anything to aim on. But anyhow, I hooked up with him. The two of us flew back to England.
The time when you were told to drop your bombs, was that was before or after you had reached your destination?
That was before.
So they said, just drop your bombs where
They
you
told
are
us,
and
yeah,
turn
get rid
around,
of it. Don't bring them back here.
just come back. but drop them.
Get rid of them. Don't come back to England.
So you had no idea where they landed. They just landed.
So I kind of hated to drop those bombs because I didn't know what I was going to hit.
Yeah.
But I did. I just dropped them. God knows what I hit. May have been people down below who got blown to hell. Maybe.
Do you remember flying in formation and seeing any planes around you getting shot down?
Yeah, I remember one time we were flying home, and all of a sudden the one on my right just disappeared. I guess what happened was he got shot and got hit. But it was almost like he exploded.
Didn't see him peel off or anything. He just was gone.
No, he just disappeared.
The records show that you flew 8 missions over Germany. And I know I've asked you before, and you don't remember exactly how many, but that's what they show on the internet if you look it up. So on the 8th mission that you flew was the one when you got shot down.
That was flying during the Battle of the Bulge. And the Bulge was where Germany had made a real effort to get through to the coast. And I can't, they made a movie of that thing. It was the English army got to the coast, and then they sent little ships, little boats from England to rescue them. That was in the movie called Mrs. Miniver. And they went up just the ordinary
Civilians.
person who happened to have a boat. And he went over to Dunkirk.
Oh, that's right. That was the name of the movie, Dunkirk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your last mission.
The weather was very bad for a week. We couldn't fly. And there was so much concern about the Bulge, and they afraid the Germans would get all the way through to the coast to Dunkirk. And they were making quite an effort to do it too, and they did very well. So Christmas Eve, the weather cleared, and everything that could was flying, trying to stop the Germans from getting all the way to Dunkirk. We had to stop them. So we flew, my group flew mainly in support of ground troops. I don't know what to do because what I was supposed to do, I just followed the leader and did what he did. But while I was flying along, I got hit. And my right wing was on fire. So I knew I was going to be, go down. So I gave an order to everybody to get out. And they did, all except my co-pilot. Oh, the the ball turret gun under the plane. He had been trying to talk to somebody in the plane, and he couldn't get to him. I don't know why. And he just rolled around and came up looking, where is everybody? What's happening? Why nobody answering me? And he found there was nobody in the plane.
What a feeling that must have been.
Yeah. He opened up, looked up, nobody there.
Was that after you had gone out, do you think?
No, that was
Or were you still in
that
the plane?
was after I. No, before I left.
Uh-huh. But everybody in that part of the plane was going.
Yeah, the back part, because that's where it would roll up.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see. Well, we're on fire. Had to get out.
Was the plane losing altitude at that point?
No, we seemed to be keeping the altitude.
But you knew the plane was going to go down.
I knew it was going to go down. So I gave the order. Well, I put the plane on automatic pilot so it would keep flying. When I think about it, I didn't realize I had forgotten that we had an automatic pilot. But obviously we did. And I got the plane flying pretty well. And so the co-pilot and I were going to get last ones to go. And when I went down to the hatch under the side where he was going out, he was sitting there with his feet laying out. And I could see what it was. It's hard to make that decision to leave. You're jumping into you don't know what.
Yeah, I would think so.
So I can see why, Terry. I see why he didn't want to go. It's hard to make that final decision to leave the plane. So he didn't want to go, but he was sitting there with his legs out, dangling out. And I said, Terry, go! And I put my foot behind him and gave him a push and pushed him out. Then I went out. And we had been told, if possible, delay opening your parachute until you get near the ground because you have a better chance of surviving. If they don't see you dropping, they can't shoot at you. So I delayed opening my parachute. I kept looking at the ground. I couldn't tell how far I was falling, but I couldn't tell how close I was getting to the ground. Oh, finally I just decided I can't tell how close to the ground I'm getting. I better pull that parachute. So I did. And I landed very shortly after that in a field that had a lot of snow. Not that it was deep, but it was covered. And I picked up the parachute and carried it with me and I ran for the woods. And I finally got into the woods and I felt like I was fairly safe there. I didn't see any soldiers. So I buried the parachute in the snow and in a bunch of little limbs and things so it wouldn't be seen. And then, what the hell am I going to do? I just hunkered down there in the woods. And I'll try to make my mind later on what I'm going to do. But
And it was dark, right? It was nighttime.
it was, you know, I have the impression that I could see. So it must have been the daylight.
Did you have a weapon?
No, I purposely didn't carry my gun. I thought I'd have a better chance of surviving
Yeah.
without it.
Wouldn't be much you could do with it anyway.
No,
Yeah, you were in the, were you near a small town? Were you weren't near a city, you were near a small town?
yeah, I think it was fairly small. Called Gerolstein or Gerolstein, Germantown.
Which was before you got to your target, because you didn't make it to the target.
That's right.
Your target that day was a place called Zellhausen. Do you remember
Was
that?
it? I don't know.
That's what the records say.
Mm.
But you landed in Gerolstein, and so tell us what happened then. You're hunkered down in the woods. How long were you there before somebody figured out?
Not very long. Somebody had seen me coming down and reported it. So the soldiers came looking for me. And it wasn't hard to find me because it was a track from where I landed in a snow-covered field where I had walked from there to the woods.
Dragon sheep.
So when the soldiers came there, they saw that, obviously. And all they had to do was follow that track in the snow. They found me pretty quickly.
How did they treat you when they first found you?
They were okay. They didn't do anything bad. They just, they asked me for the parachute. Where was it? And I told them. And as we walked along away from there, one of the German soldiers was carrying a parachute. And it was heavy and bulky. And I thought to myself, why in the world is that man carrying that parachute?
Yeah.
Instead of giving it to me and make me carry it.
That would have made sense, yeah.
Well, it was just like, I have a picture of a cartoon where the light goes on, light bulb goes on over your head. You know, you suddenly realize that you should be doing something. So I wondered why he was carrying it. And then the same thing happened to him. He realized he shouldn't be doing it. So he gave it to me to carry.
He must have had mental telepathy.
Yeah.
Right to his brain, he thought, why am I carrying this thing?
Mm.
So where did they take you at that point?
We went into, I guess, into Gerolstein, whatever. And they took me before some German officer. And he started asking me some questions, and I just told him what I was supposed to, name, rank, and serial number. And he realized he wasn't getting anywhere. So he had some soldiers take me somewhere in the town. And when I got there, it was one of their, sort of their office. And there were the German soldiers. And I watched them. It was just like a movie.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like a movie. They were in uniform and doing what they always did, but I just never thought I'd ever see them doing that. Clicking their heels and throwing their arm out, "Hi, Hitler!" I didn't think people really did that.
Only in the
But
movies.
it's true, they did that. So, what happened from there? Oh, I know. They put me in an abandoned house. And I was in there by myself. And then it got dark. And I was lying on the floor. The house was abandoned. And I was just lying on the floor for some place to lie down. And it was then Christmas Eve. And I thought to myself, what's it like at home? Christmas Eve, what are they doing? And here I am lying on this damn floor. In a German house. And then during the night, they put some more guards in there. Not guards, some more soldiers, American soldiers. And I never really had a chance to talk to the others. It was dark, and so anyhow, we spent the night in that house. And then in the morning, they got me out of there. And they gave me something I've never seen since to eat. They were like, I don't know how to describe them. They were kind of a nutty tasting thing. And I thought, well, this is what I'm going to get. This won't be too bad. This tastes really good. But I never saw those again.
Okay, this is an interview for the Library of Congress on November 10th, 2018. We're at Ginger Cove in Annapolis, Maryland. My name is Peter Herring, and we're interviewing my father, Paul L. Herring, about his experiences in World War II. And we left off before the break where he had was flying his last mission over Germany, was shot down, had parachuted out of the plane and landed, been captured in a town called Gerolstein, Germany, and he was talking about his experiences after he was captured. So why don't we pick it up from there, Daddy? Where you were talking about having seen Germans who were clicking their heels like you didn't think that really happened, but it actually did.
And the hand flying out.
Just like a movie. So where did they take you? You spent the night in an abandoned house that first night, and then what happened after that?
They brought a lot of American prisoners, Americans who had been caught by the Germans. I can't remember just what was going on at that time, but the American GIs, ordinary soldiers, were picked up and caught at that time. I can't remember why. If I had plenty of time, I would think about it. Maybe it would come to me. Because I was in with these men who were ordinary GIs.
Were they infantry people on the ground mostly, or were they Air Corps? They weren't.
Well, they were just GIs, soldiers, infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And they were caught. I can't remember just why. They told me why. You know, one thing I found, that some of our American officers in the infantry didn't really know how to do their job. They didn't do very well. There was an American colonel who was caught, and he was in a group that I was in. And what happened was, I know one or two other people. My father-in-law was one. When the war started, thought, well, they were already, they had experience. They were in the Army or Navy or whatever it might be. And they thought, oh, well, we might as well get back into it too. Which was not a good idea. My father-in-law was set off somewhere or other, and he wanted to get the hell out and go home. And I think one of these officers that was captured and was with the group that I joined, he was a colonel in the Army, but he was what they call a retread. He thought that he should get back in. Oh, this will be fun. Well, I'll get back into this thing, and I don't know what they thought.
He didn't really like it that much.
He didn't realize what was going to happen, and he got captured. And I thought, well, he's a senior officer. He'll know what to do. And he was worth nothing. He did nothing of any value and really became a drag.
So what was the
That probably wasn't true of everybody who older men who came back in the service.
What do you think the Germans' goal was? Where were they taking you? What do you, as it turned out, where were they? Were they taking you to a prison camp? Were they just putting you in temporary quarters? What was?
Well, there were a lot of American soldiers captured. I used to know some of it, why, what happened, because there were so many prisoners, and they talked among themselves and with me, and as to what happened, why they got captured. The Germans were doing so much to make up for losses, and they captured a lot of American GIs.
Where did you go from there?
Oh, I remember hearing some of the officers talk about where their problem was, why they had been captured, how things were just not taken care of properly. Also, it was an area where there was nothing much going on, and there were a lot of GIs stationed there who didn't have anything much to do.
Would be prisoners.
So they were taken prisoners. I should know what they call that, but I can't think of it now. But yeah,
tell us about the times that you spent marching in Germany, and where you think they were marching you to, and the kind of places where they made you stay.
Well, you'd be amazed when I came out from that house the next day and got in with some more just regular GI soldiers, Americans. And I found out what had happened, that there were so many of them were caught and became prisoner. And we started off walking. I got in with all these regular soldiers. And we were walking where they told us to go. And I could look ahead and see the line of American prisoners. There were so many. It was in an area where they didn't think anything was going to happen. and they put new American soldiers into that area because they thought that would be a good place for them to start. They didn't know anything about the war. So they put them there to get them introduced back into it. And what happened was, they didn't know what the hell they were doing there.
And they got caught.
And they got caught. And so when we left there and started walking, there was a tremendous long line of prisoners that I could see. And
Did you have any idea where you were walking?
no, I had no
Just
idea.
follow the guy ahead of you, just keep on
We
going?
just kept going. There were guards who kept us together, kept us moving.
Where did you sleep at night? How many did you, was this something that happened over a period of days or weeks where you just kept moving? Where did you sleep at night when you stopped walking?
I can only remember one or two places. I do remember one was looked sort of like a factory, a big metal building, and we were just put in there, and they had some guards on the outside to make sure we stayed there. And the floor was covered with sawdust and fairly deep. I don't know how deep, but I do know that at night I would take my hands and dig down into that sawdust to get down low as I could, because it was a little warmer there, and it was cold as hell. It was really cold. And during the night, I remember that first night, I get so cold, I get up and start walking to keep the blood going. Maybe I'd be a little bit warmer if I'd walk. So I got out of my little cubby hole that I had dug and walked. Then I'd get tired. I'd go back to that place and lie down. And I thought that night would never end. And I went to the door of this building, I call it a factory. And there were some guards outside. And I was awful tempted to look at them and see if they turned their back, and I would make a dash for it. But then I thought, if I do, where the hell would I go?
Yeah.
I don't really know where I am. So I didn't do anything, but I spent the night shivering and shaking and getting up and walking and getting down into that hole that I dug in the sawdust.
What were they giving you to eat?
Nothing. No, I don't think they had any food to give us. I don't think they did.
I remember you telling me, and I remember seeing a piece of it at Charlie Mell's house. Charlie Mell was
Oh,
your tail gunner?
he was a friend of mine from school. And in my travels around in this country, I ran into him. And he had been assigned as a tail gunner to some crew. And I said, Charlie, it would be nice if we could get together. And he said, do you think you could arrange it? And I said, well, I'll see what I can do. So I did get my tail gunner transferred to another crew, so Charlie could come in and join me as a tail gunner. And the one that I had reassigned to another crew, he was mad as hell. And I didn't blame him.
Because he
had
was
gotten
used
in
to
with a
working
group
with,
and knew them.
he was used to working with your crew and didn't want to go have to learn a whole new group of people.
That's right. He was being put in another group, another planes, and so I didn't blame him for being mad with me. But I was much happier to have Charlie Mill, who I knew from school.
So Charlie, when I was young, Daddy took us over to visit Charlie Mell, who was his tail gunner, lived in Northern Virginia, I believe. And he had on his mantle
Oh,
a piece of bread.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Why don't you tell him what that was?
Well, yeah, you can tell him.
No, you tell him. You were the one that had to experience it.
It was German bread that he had brought home with him, and it was like a piece of what is this? What happens to wood when it gets old?
Petrified.
Huh?
Petrified.
Yeah, it was like petrified wood. That's what we were given to eat.
So Charlie had saved a piece of
He had
this
saved it and
bread,
brought it home
the
with him.
so-called bread that they were giving them, the prisoners, brought it home, keep it as a souvenir, and it was on his mantle when I was a young kid, and it was hard as a brick. But tell him what it was made of, and what it tasted like, and how you all had to eat it.
Well, we felt like it was sawdust, but obviously it wasn't. I don't know what they made it of, but it was very sour. Very sour. And jumping ahead a little bit, when I went to Russia, and the Russians gave me their bread. By gosh, it was more sour than the German bread.
It's not saying much, is it?
All right, get back to the story.
Well, you were talking too about at that time that you all used to toast that bread to make it a little bit
Oh yeah.
more palatable.
Eventually, when we settled into a place, we were given a cup of soup a day, and then a hunk of bread that we were supposed to divide up among 8 of us. So we ended up with an 1/8 of a piece of bread. And it wasn't divided equally among us, a group. It was up to us to do it. So how we did, I don't remember having a knife, but we had to have some way to cut that bread up. And we cut it very carefully, so that each person got an 1/8 of a loaf of bread. They got that and a cup of soup a day.
And there were two things that I think were interesting that people might like to hear. And one was, I'm going to just quickly say it quickly so that I don't forget to come back to it. One of them was about your gum, and the second one was about the can of meat that you were given that you had to split with somebody else. So
Yeah.
let's start with the
Gum.
5-pack the 5-pack of gum that you had, and tell them when you got it and how long you made it last and why.
I don't remember just how I got it. Well, I think I had a package of gum, the chewing gum, just that you would normally have. That had how many sticks were in a
I
package?
think a 5-pack.
5-pack, I guess. And I chewed that because I thought it would help keep my teeth in good shape. And I'd chew a stick until it literally disintegrated into nothing. And I did that religiously because I really felt, since I had no way of taking care of my teeth, I couldn't brush them or anything like that. That would be the way I could do to preserve my teeth.
So he made that 5-pack stick of gum last from at least Christmas Eve 1944, when he got shot down, until sometime in March 1945 when he got released by the Russians. And I will say, I don't know whether anybody's interested in hearing it, but when I was a kid and he used to practice law and come home for lunch every day, and he would, when he'd leave for work in the morning, he would take a stick of gum out, tear it in half, put half of it back in the pack and put half of it in his mouth. And he would go to work and he'd come home at lunch, and at lunchtime he'd take that piece of half a stick of gum out of his mouth, put it on the plate and eat his lunch. And after lunch he would put that half a stick back in his mouth and go back to work and chew it until the end of the day.
I don't remember that.
And then the next day he'd get the other half out and chew that one for the whole day until he'd gone through that pack of gum. So,
Well, I am very frugal. Frugal.
yes, he is.
I don't throw things away. I make them last. And if my friend Gibby were here, she would attest to that I make things last a long time. As a matter of fact, when I married the second wife, I said, you have to know about me. I am frugal, but most people would call me cheap. I don't throw things away.
The other thing I want you to talk about was when the Red Cross delivered at some point, or you were able as a prisoner of war to get canned meat through the Red Cross, and they gave a can of meat to you and one other guy in the prisoner of war. And you had said to me that you all tried to decide when you were going to eat that can of meat.
Well, let me go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Before that. I was in this camp. I think it was called Oflag 64Z, I think that's what they called it. And when the Russians, I guess you all know this, you know that Germany attacked Russia and didn't do very well. They got into the Russian cold, and the soldiers, the Germans, began having a terrible time because of the cold weather. And they lost their war against Russia. And Russia turned around and came back into Germany and tried to make up for what the Germans did to them. And, well, going back before that, when the Russians came into Germany, I didn't realize what they were doing, but the guards took us out of the prison camp we were in, and we were going back into Germany. We were going to walk all the way back into Germany from Poland. And the Germans decided there's no point in leaving food there. So they took what the Red Cross had given us and divided it up among the soldiers before we left to walk back into Germany. And another fellow and I had this can of meat between the two of us. That's what we'd been given. And every evening when we'd stop walking, and I said, what shall we do with this can of meat? Shall we open it up and eat it? No. Let's wait, we may need more tomorrow than we do today. Every time we stopped, I'd say, well, shall we open this thing? No. Wait till tomorrow, we may need it more then. And finally, the Russians caught up with us. And the German guards left us. And then we were able to get some food. And And we said, well, we've got this can of meat now, what are we going to do with it? We don't need it now because we've got other food that we were getting. But anyhow, we decided to open and eat it. But that we did after we had food coming in from other sources. So we just held it all that time till we didn't need it, and then we ate it.
When the Russians were coming into Germany, when you were able to, what happened? Tell them about when you were able to be liberated, when you did get liberated, and what that was like.
Well, we were stopping. The German guards put us in a little schoolhouse, as I recall. I think it was a schoolhouse. And during the night, somebody went outside and came back in, and they said, the guards have left us. We don't see them. I said, oh, it couldn't be possible. I went out and looked, and sure enough, the guards are all gone. And the next day, the Russians came into town. And one of them came into where I was in the schoolhouse. And he didn't know who I was. And he put his gun on me, and I threw up my hands and said, American, American, American. Ah, Amerikansky. Ah, yeah. Dodge, Ford, Studebaker. And so that was it. With the Germans are gone, and the Russians took over, and they just turned us loose and said, "Do what you want to do. You're not being held anymore." So we did. We found places we could slip and sleep. We were in this German town. Found places where we could stay. And I began to loot.
You were taking food?
I was trying to find some food. I went around into the German houses. I had no compunction about taking stuff from them. So, in doing so, I found some flour. I found a can of, or some kind of container with sorghum in it. And some of the Americans would be, they knew how to make pancakes. We got a hold of some milk, and what they would do is let the milk sour, and then they'd be able to make some pancakes and cook them. Because the sour, I guess, gave enough whatever you could need to make bread rise.
Do you have any idea how much you weighed at that time?
Well, I weighed myself. I don't know how I did it, but it was in what is it? Not in pounds.
Oh, kilograms?
Hmm?
It was kilograms? It was metric? Weighing?
It wasn't that. It was in stones.
Oh.
I think that's the way it was. And I converted that into pounds, and near as I could figure, I was weighed 90 pounds.
90 pounds. And when you went into the service, what did you weigh?
Oh, I don't know. 150 pounds, maybe. But when we got a hold of that pancake flour and made pancakes and put sorghum in it, and when I got out of there and came home, I was up to 160 pounds, more than I've weighed in my life. And I think it was a result of that sorghum that I was.
Probably was. When when you got, after you got liberated, where did you go from there?
Well, let's see. We were in this German town, and the Russians were there, and the Russians didn't mind doing whatever they wanted to do to the Germans. They had been attacked, and now they were attacking back. They were taking care of what they wanted to do. And they found a woman they wanted to rape, they did it. Because they figured they'd been taking the brunt of it, and everything had been going bad for them. So now they were going to make up for it. And they did. And I was surprised at how many women were there in the army fighting.
When you were liberated, though, at that point, so now you've got all these American prisoners who are now no longer prisoners, but they're in Germany. And where do you go? What do you do?
No. You see, when I left this prison camp we were in, there weren't very many. I think there were only maybe 70, 75, 100. There weren't very many. And when we got to this little German town where the Russians drove off the Germans, we just took over a house and lived there in the house.
But were you expecting American soldiers to come at some point and get you out of there?
Well, we talked with some of the Americans who had been prisoners, and we said maybe we'll try to leave here and go back and cross the lines, get back into France. And they said, no way, don't do that. You just can't possibly make it through the lines and back into France. So we just stayed there until, the Russians, very nice. They took us back to Russia. At least a small group that I was with. We went back to Odessa on the Black Sea. And
how'd you get there?
They took us there on a train.
Uh-huh.
We were well treated by the Russians. You see, we were allies fighting with the Russians. So they were taking care of their allies, and we profited by it.
And what happened when you got to Odessa?
The Russians seemed to think that we had with us a German guard. And they were trying to find out who he was, which one of us was a German. And they kept interrogating us, and we were protecting this German because he'd been nice to us, and he said that he had been living in this country and went back to Germany and got caught there and had to leave, had to stay there. And he was very nice with us. So we protected him. And we didn't let the Russians know that we had this German guard with us. We gave him some of our clothes to make him look like an American. And we were able to get along with that pretty well until we got to Odessa. And then the Germans, the Russians, really wanted to find that guy. So they did everything they could trying to find him. And we protected him because he'd been nice to us.
How was he able to get back to America, or did they end up finding him?
Well, eventually, Americans sent a boat for us. I don't know how they found out where we were, but they sent a boat to pick us up from Odessa. There weren't very many of us left.
Did they pick him up too,
Yeah.
as an American?
Mm-hmm.
And where did you go on that
We
boat?
didn't, we went to, where is it in Italy? Naples.
You went from Odessa to Naples,
To
Italy?
Naples, And we turned him over to the American authorities and told him that we had brought him back. We thought to treat him properly because he has done a good job for us and very nice to us. So I never heard from him again. I don't know what happened to him.
How did you get home from Naples?
From Naples, I was given clothes and given an identity, which a card which identified me, which I was looking at the other day, has my picture and the date, 1945.
And they brought you back on a ship?
No, from Naples we flew down to Algiers, I think. And from there we flew to New York by way of a stopover in the Canary Islands. And when I got to New York, my navigator who was with me, he said, "You're free to go wherever you want to go." So I called to try to get my parents at home to tell them I was in New York. And I couldn't get them. I guess they were out that night.
And your parents knew that you were a prisoner of war. But
Yeah, they had gotten word.
Had they gotten word that you had been liberated?
They had gotten the word that I was in Russia.
Okay.
And so when we arrived in New York, and they said, you do anything you want. You can stay here or go whatever you want to do. So my navigator and I got on a train. He lived in Virginia. What the hell is that?
Northern Virginia?
Yeah, I can't think. What is it? Big city. I should know right offhand, but
Arlington?
anyway.
He was coming down this way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we both of us got on a train. I hadn't gotten in touch with my parents because they were out that day. And we got on the train. And when I got to Washington, I got off, and he kept on going to Richmond.
Richmond.
Never saw from or heard from again. I don't know what he did.
What happened when you got off the train in Washington, D.C., right?
Then I wanted to get home. So I went and got on a streetcar. And I don't know what I used. I think I must have had some money. I got on a streetcar, and I rode that streetcar from there to Eckington. And there I made a transfer into one and rode that streetcar to Hyattsville, where I got off and walked home. And I came into my home, my old home. My parents were having breakfast. I guess it was around 8 o'clock in the morning. And I walked in, and they were some kind of surprised to see me. Coming in at that hour of the morning. From God knows where. They didn't know where the hell I was.
They had no
Last
idea,
they had heard was that I was in Russia.
but had no idea whether you were alive or not, really.
No.
And all of a sudden the front door opens and there you are.
Yep.
And that was in the spring of 1945, right?
I guess it was, yeah.
And then
So we made a round trip around.
I know that this interview is there's roughly a time limit on it, but so I want to kind of wrap this up with your experience in from that point. Now you're home. You really weren't a fan of the war. You weren't a fan of the military, and yet you were still in the military.
I went back to school.
You were ready to get out of the
Back to
military.
college.
But tell them about your experience in trying to get out of the military before you went back to school.
And getting out of the military?
Yeah, you had said
I don't know.
that they wanted you to stay in and become a first lieutenant.
Oh, yeah. I was down in Florida somewhere, airfield down there. And I was just waiting for them to gave me orders to come home. And I didn't get orders, and I finally went to the headquarters and orderly room, and I said, what's happened? I'm supposed to go home. They said, well, you don't have enough points. And I don't know whether you all know, but the way of getting out of the service when the war was over, they did it on a point basis. And the points were awarded to you for different things. One depended on how long you had been serving, whether you were overseas, or whether you did this, that, and the other thing, depended on how many points you got. And I had enough points to get out, to come home. But I went to the orderly room and I said, why am I'm supposed to go home, what's wrong? Well, you just got promoted from second lieutenant to first lieutenant, and now you don't have enough points. So we can't send you home. So I went to see the colonel in charge, and I told him what had happened. And I said, I don't want that promotion, I want to go home. Well, he was very nice, and he said, well, let me see what I can do. So he called the Pentagon and talked to somebody there and told them what my predicament was. And they said, just tell the officer to refuse his promotion. Then he'll be back as a second lieutenant. And he'll have enough points there. So I did. I refused that promotion as quick as I could. And then they said, okay, you go home now. And that's what I did.
But didn't you say that didn't you have to write a letter or
Oh, I had to write a letter refusing that promotion.
Yeah, you didn't want the promotion, but they gave you the promotion anyway.
Yeah, but I got rid of it.
You got rid of it so you could come home.
So I could come home.
So then, after the war, you went back to the University of Maryland.
Yeah, because I had 3 years before I went in the Army. So I went back and started school again. And I had gotten out of the service pretty early than most people did. And when I went back to school, to college, I was sort of a celebrity. They weren't used to people getting them out of the service. They weren't used to people who had been prisoners of war. So they kind of looked at me and pointed. He's the one who. He's the one who was. Not anymore.
No.
And so I finished that year of college, graduated, and got married at that time.
And after Maryland, you went to?
I went to law school in Washington, George Washington.
So the military war experience is over at that point. He goes about his life as an attorney.
I was out of it, and thank goodness I was glad to get out of it. I had to go to Fort Meade to get separated from the Army. And I remember that day as I was walking out, thinking I'm a free man. No more Army for me.
Must have been.
And as I started to walk out, an officer beckoned to me. Said, "Come in here, I want to talk to you." And I said, I'm a free man. I'm not in the service anymore. He said, "You will be once you talk to me. You're not leaving here till you talk to me." So I said, "Okay, what is it? Just get it over with, because I'm leaving." And he said, "I want you to join the reserves." I said, "I don't want to join the reserves. I want to go home." Well, he said, "The sooner you join the reserves, the sooner you'll get out of here." So I said, "Well, what can I do? I don't want to be in the reserves." And he said, "Well, you can resign." I said, how quickly can I resign?" He said, "Do it anytime you want." So the minute I got home, I wrote a letter resigning from the reserves. And that was the end of my service with the United States Army.
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up then at this point. And Daddy, I appreciate it. Appreciate the interview. I appreciate your service. And I appreciate you being my father.
Well, that's a two-way street.